The distress beacon had been screaming for 6 hours before Captain Cole Hartman answered it. Not because he was slow, because every other ship in the sector had already turned away. The signal originated from a drifting freighter registered to the Vorkai Trade Union. A species that stood 3 meters tall, had 4 arms, and collectively believed that humans were something between amusing and irrelevant. The kind of species that built monuments to their own patience and named warships after geological events. Cole punched the docking clamps into the side of the Vorkai freighter without asking permission. His crew, all 7 of them aboard the scout vessel Barnett, were already suiting up before he reached the corridor. "Life signs?" he asked. "One," said his navigator, Pete Dunn, not looking up from the console. "Barely." The airlock hissed. Cole went in first. Across the inside of the freighter was a wreck. Support struts had collapsed across the main corridor. A fire had burned itself out somewhere near the engine room, leaving the walls black and the air tasting like scorched wiring. Emergency lighting pulsed a dim orange, the color of something trying very hard not to give up. He found her in the 3rd compartment. She was Vorkai, which meant she was enormous. Even crumpled against the wall with one arm pinned under a collapsed beam. She took up most of the room, 4 eyes, half open. The deep amber of her species when conscious, going gray at the edges when not. Her skin, usually a mottled blue-green in healthy Vorkai, had gone pale. She looked at Cole. He was 5 feet 11 inches, 180 pounds, wearing a suit that added maybe 30 more. She looked at him the way someone looks at a child who has wandered into the wrong neighborhood. "You," she said, in standard trade language, her voice a low scrape of sound, "are very small." "Yeah," Cole said. He was already crouching next to the beam. "Hold still. This beam weighs 400 kilograms. I know. You cannot lift it." He braced his legs, got his shoulder under the edge of the beam, and lifted. It moved. Not fast. Not gracefully. He made a sound that he would later describe to Pete as something no one should ever hear a grown man make. But the beam moved, and he got it high enough that she could pull her arm free. She did. She stared at her arm, then at him. He dropped the beam. It hit the floor, and the whole freighter shuddered. "The engine coolant is leaking," he said, catching his breath. "We have about 12 minutes before this section floods with gas that will kill both of us. Can you walk?" She looked at her arm. It was broken in at least 3 places from the angle it hung. Vorkai bones were dense and slow to heal, even the pain had to be significant. But she was already trying to stand. "I can walk," she said. She got to her feet. She was a full meter taller than him. She looked down at him from that height with an expression he could not quite read. "You are still very small," she said. "And you are still in a burning ship," Cole said. "Move." They moved. Pete had the airlock open and the docking clamps released before they were even through the corridor. Cole got the Vorkai woman through the hatch with about 40 seconds to spare. The freighter's midsection vented a moment later, a silent bloom of pale green gas that expanded and then became nothing. The Vorkai woman sat in the Barnett's cargo bay because there was nowhere else that fit her. She held her broken arm carefully and watched the humans move around her with the focused attention of someone filing information away. "We need to set that arm," said the Barnett's medic, a compact woman named Laura Kim, who came up to approximately the Vorkai woman's knee. The Vorkai woman looked at her. "You are also very small," she said. "Broken bones are broken bones," Laura said. "What's your name?" A pause. Vorkai names did not translate cleanly into standard. What came out sounded like gravel sliding across sheet metal. "We'll call you Gray," Laura said. "Hold still, Gray." Gray held still. Laura worked, and the bone set made a sound that caused 2 crew members in the adjacent corridor to visibly flinch. Gray did not make a sound. Cole, leaning in the cargo bay doorway, watched her. She was watching him back. "Why did you come?" she asked. "The Vorkai Trade Authority logged this beacon. They sent no ship." "I know. Other vessels were in range. None responded." "I know that too. So why did you come?" Cole considered the question the way he considered all serious questions, which was by not reaching for the first answer that showed up. "Because someone was in there," he said. Gray was quiet for a moment. Then she said, the edge of something in her voice that was not quite teasing and not quite anything else. "You came for one life, in a ship that could barely dock with mine, with hands that should not have moved that beam. But they did." "Yes," she said. "They did." She looked at him with all 4 of her amber eyes. "You are too small," she said, "only to satisfy my feelings about what you just did." Cole blinked. Pete appeared in the corridor behind him, looked at the scene, and quietly backed away. Laura finished the bone set, stood up and said without looking at either of them, "She means it as a compliment. In Vorkai, when something is bigger than the words available, they say the vessel is too small to hold it." Cole looked at Gray. Gray looked at Cole. "Your translator," Gray said, "is very perceptive." "She's also the best medic in the sector," Cole said. "I believe that," Gray said. And something that might, on a human face, have been the beginning of a smile moved across hers. The Barnet turned toward the nearest relay station. Cole went back to the bridge. Pete did not say anything for 4 whole minutes, which was a record. Then he said, "So." "Don't," Cole said. Pete said nothing for another 30 seconds. "She called you small 4 times. Pete, just noting it. Note it somewhere I can't hear you." Outside the viewport, the stars held still the way they always did, indifferent to everything. But inside the Barnet, something had shifted, the way things shift when a door opens that no one planned to open, and the air on both sides turns out to be the same temperature. Cole kept his eyes on the navigation display. He did not think about the 4 amber eyes watching the cargo bay ceiling. He absolutely did not think about that. The relay station at Junction 5 was not built for Vorkai. Nothing at Junction 5 was built for Vorkai. The ceilings were standard human height, plus a meter of clearance for larger species, which put the top of Gray's head about 6 inches from the light fixtures at all times. She walked through it like she was used to the universe being the wrong size for her. Cole walked beside her because he had filed the arrival report and was technically responsible for her presence. Also because no one had told him not to. The station medical officer confirmed Laura's bone set, added 2 bioaccelerant injections, and told Gray she needed 48 hours of rest before any heavy activity. Gray looked at the medical officer. "I have a cargo schedule. You have a broken arm in 3 places. I am aware of this." 48 hours, the medical officer said, in the tone of someone who had negotiated with large species before and had no plans to lose. Gray looked at Cole. Cole said nothing. Gray looked back at the medical officer. 48 hours? They gave her a berth in the overflow section, the only place on the station with ceilings tall enough, unless it had been used for storage before and still smelled like old equipment crates. But it had a bunk that could be extended and a viewport that faced the open sector. Cole walked her to it. He was not entirely sure why he kept doing that. Walking places with her. But she did not object, and he did not stop. At the door, she turned back to look at him. "Your ship is called Barnett," she said. "Yes." "After a human? A woman who flew medical transports during the First Contact War. Alone. The 18 runs. She died on the 19th. Gray considered this. She flew toward danger. Every single time. And you named your ship for her? Yes. Gray looked at him for a moment with an expression that had moved away from unreadable and into something more like deliberate. "Your species names things for what it wants to become," she said. Cole had never thought about it that way. He thought about it now. He said, "I think that's right." "Orcs name things for what they have already accomplished." "What does your freighter mean? The name of it?" "It translates as third profit margin of the Eastern expansion." Cole looked at her. He could not help it. The corner of his mouth moved. Gray watched his face. "You find that amusing?" "A little." "It is a practical name. Very practical." "Your name," she said. "Cole Hartman." "What does it mean?" "Nothing. It's just a name." She made a sound low in her throat that her translator rendered as a hum of consideration. "Among my people, a name that means nothing is given to someone expected to define it themselves. We don't think of it that way. Perhaps you should." She stepped through the door. Before it closed, she said without turning around, 48 hours is a long time to sit still. If you have nothing useful to do, I do not object to company." The door closed. No, Pete was leaning against the corridor wall 10 feet away, arms crossed, wearing an expression of profound personal satisfaction. Cole looked at him. "I was just walking past," Pete said. "There are no walkways in this direction." "I got turned around." Cole walked past him. Pete fell into step beside him. "She invited you back," Pete said. "She said she didn't object to company." In Vorkai's social structure, that is functionally a formal invitation. Cole stopped walking. He looked at Pete. "How do you know Vorkai's social structure?" Pete shrugged. "Laura told me. She looked it up in the first 20 minutes. She's thorough." Cole started walking again. "Also," Pete said, "Gray asked Laura 3 questions about you before we docked. Very casual, very spaced out. Laura is also thorough in different ways." The corridor was quiet. "What did Laura tell her?" Cole asked, in a tone designed to sound like he was asking for no particular reason. "That you'd been captaining 7 years. That yes, you do things like that often. It's deeply irritating to the crew. And that no family. You live on the Barnett." Cole processed this. "Laura talks too much." "Laura is building interspecies relations," Pete said. "She's very civic-minded." At the far end of the corridor, 2 station workers were arguing about cargo manifests. A food cart was dispensing something that smelled like reheated protein and ambition. The relay station hummed around them, full of the ordinary noise of people going places and carrying things. Cole thought about a woman in an overflow berth looking out a viewport at open sector with a broken arm in 3 places and 48 hours to fill. He thought about the Barnett, named for someone who flew toward danger. He thought about names that mean nothing until the person inside them decides otherwise. "I'm going to check on the ship's resupply manifest," Cole said. "Of course you are," Pete said. "It's due at 1700. "Absolutely." Cole turned and walked in the direction of the overflow section. Pete watched him go. Then Pete went and found Laura and said, 10 credits says he's back there within the hour." Laura did not look up from her work. I'm not betting against a certainty. That's not gambling. That's just taking someone's money. The 48 hours did not feel like 48 hours. Gray would not have said that aloud to anyone who asked, but it was true. She had logged time on long solo freighter runs, weeks in the dark between stations, and those had felt like exactly what they were. Long and dark and made of waiting. The overflow berth at Junction 5 had a bad mattress, fixtures that buzzed at the wrong frequency, and a viewport that faced a mostly empty stretch of sector with nothing decorative about it. She had not been bored for a single hour. Cole Hartman came back on the second day with actual food, not station protein, but something Laura had sourced from a Vorkai trade stall 2 levels down. Dense grain cakes and a salt broth that was not quite right, but was trying to be. Gray looked at the food, then at him. "Laura told you," she said. "Laura is thorough." "She is," Gray said. "Sit down." He sat where he had sat the day before, in the chair that was too small for her and slightly too casual for him, none with the air of a man who had decided not to pretend he was somewhere else. They talked. Not about the rescue, not about the beam, which other humans would have returned to repeatedly, Gray suspected, pulling meaning from it the way some species did with their own bravery. Cole had done the thing and filed it in the same category as breathing. They talked about the eastern routes, then about the Vorkai expansion 3 generations back, then about a human conflict Cole's grandfather had been part of. A ground war on a planet that was no one's planet now, abandoned after the fighting because no one wanted what they had broken to get to it. "He came home?" Gray asked. "Yes." "Changed?" "My mother said he laughed differently after. Same laugh, but it started a half-second later, like he was checking something first." Gray was quiet. Then she said, "Among my people there is a word for that half-second." "What does it translate to?" "It does not translate well. The closest is the moment between the self that was and the self that remained." Cole looked at the grain cake in his hand. "That's a long concept." "It is 3 syllables in Vorkai." "Of course it is." Gray made the sound that her translator had been rendering as a hum of consideration, but which Cole had started to understand was something more specific than that. It was the sound she made when something pleased her without entirely surprising her. The sound of a correct answer arriving on time. They were in the middle of a discussion about navigation methodology, the Vorkai approach versus the human one, when the station alert pulsed twice. Not the emergency pulse. The double pulse of a developing situation, something being watched. Cole checked his communicator. Pete's message was 3 words. "Pirates. 2 ships. Coming." Junction 5 was small. A relay and resupply station, not a military installation. It had a single defensive platform, enough to discourage casual aggression, not enough to stop anyone committed to the job. Cole stood up. Gray stood up at the same time, all 4 eyes sharp, the conversation gone from her face entirely. "You should stay here," Cole said. "I have a broken arm," Gray said, "not broken legs." "You're not my crew." "No, but you docked with my ship. Under Vorkai code, now that creates an obligation." "What obligation?" "The same one you answered when you heard my beacon." They looked at each other. Cole decided not to argue with Vorkai trade code when he was already low on time. "Stay behind the crew line," he said. "I will stay where I am useful," Gray said. They moved. The pirate ships were gig class, stripped-down haulers converted for hit and run. Onto their method was simple. One ship occupied the defensive platform, while the second docked at the cargo loading bay and took what it could carry in 20 minutes. Fast, practiced, and built on the assumption that no one at a small relay station was going to put up serious resistance. Junction 5's security team was 4 people. Not enough. Cole reached the loading bay before the second pirate ship finished docking. Pete was already there with 2 crew members from another vessel in port. A short-haul trader named Danny Ruiz and his engineer, a woman named Carla Voss, who looked at the situation and said, "Well, it's not the worst Tuesday I've had." The pirate team came through the docking hatch, 6 of them, armed with disruption rods, and the easy confidence of people who had done this before, without paying for it. They saw Cole and his group. They saw Gray standing behind Cole's group. There was a very specific kind of silence that happens when a plan meets something it did not account for. Gray was a 3-meter Vorkai with 4 arms, one of which was in a stabilizer brace, and the bearing of someone who moved through the universe expecting it to make room for her rather than the other way around. The pirate at the front said something in a language Cole's translator struggled with. Gray replied in the same language. Briefly. The translator caught the last word. Leave. The pirate at the front looked at his team. One of the pirates at the back was already stepping backward. That's not going to work, the front one said, specifically in standard, specifically so everyone could hear the confidence in it. Cole had his hand near his sidearm. Pete and Danny and Carla had taken positions at the cargo stack. It might have stayed a standoff. They sometimes did. One of the pirates, not the front one, but the one on the far left, with the posture of someone who made his own decisions regardless of the plan, moved to flank. Things stopped being a standoff. Cole moved forward. The pirate swung the disruption rod, and Cole was already inside the arc of the swing, the only place it could not reach. The thing nobody outside of close-quarters training seemed to understand about rod weapons. He took it away without ceremony, and used the pirate's own momentum to sit him down on the loading bay floor very firmly. Pete handled the second one with the efficiency of a man who had been in too many of these to find them interesting anymore. Danny Ruiz, it turned out, had a background he had not mentioned, because he and Carla removed the 3rd and 4th pirates from the situation in about 8 seconds, using a method that made Gray tilt her head with what looked like professional appreciation. That left 2. One ran back through the hatch to the ship. One tried to go through Gray. Gray caught him by the back of his jacket with her uninjured arm, lifted him to approximately her eye level, looked at him for a moment that could not have been comfortable for him, and set him down very carefully, eye facing the hatch. "Go," she said. He went. The hatch sealed. The pirate ship undocked. The other pirate ship, hearing that the second had cut and run, decided the defensive platform was more interesting after all and disengaged. The loading bay was quiet. Carla Voss looked around at all of them and said, "Better than most Tuesdays, actually." Danny Ruiz was already filing an incident report on his communicator. The movements of someone doing this for the 4th or 5th time, and who had strong feelings about documentation. Pete looked at Cole. He did not say the thing he was clearly thinking. Pete was, when he chose to be, a man of genuine restraint. Gray was looking at her injured arm. The stabilizer brace had held. She flexed the fingers of that hand carefully. "Functional," she said, to no one in particular. Cole walked over to her. He looked up. She looked down. "Next time," he said, "well, when I say stay at the crew line." "You did not specify a crew line." "I said behind the crew." "I was behind you," Gray said. "You are crew." Cole looked at her. The 4 amber eyes were steady and entirely unapologetic. "You," he said, "are very difficult." "Yes," Gray said. And there was that motion at the edge of her expression again, the one that on a human face would have been a smile. And you are still very small. You keep saying that. It keeps being interesting, Gray said. Outside, the pirate ships were already gone, slipped back into the sector. The station returned to its ordinary hum. Cargo manifests and food carts and people going places, carrying things, living the unremarkable lives that were actually the whole point of everything else. Inside the loading bay, in the smell of exertion and disruption, rod ozone and old freight, Cole Hartman looked up at Gray and did not look away. The departure board at Junction 5 updated at 600 hours. Gray's name appeared on it. Transit vessel, Eastern Sector, departing at 1400. Cole saw it at 6:03. He had his coffee in his hand, and he stood in front of the board for longer than the board deserved. Pete appeared beside him with his own coffee, looked at the board, looked at Cole, and said nothing. This was, Cole felt, the correct response. At 800 hours, Cole went to the overflow section. The door was open. Gray was standing at the viewport watching the sector the way she had been watching it since she arrived. Her arm was in a lighter brace now, almost ready for full use. Her cargo had been transferred to a replacement freighter the Vorkai Trade Authority had finally sent, 12 hours late and without an apology, which was consistent with everything Cole knew about the Vorkai Trade Authority. You saw the board, Gray said, without turning around. Yes. Eastern Sector is a long run. 60 days to the first waypoint. I know. She turned. The amber of her eyes was the full color now. Nothing gray at the edges, nothing going dim. She looked at him, and he looked back, and the distance between them in the room was small enough that he was aware of it in the way you are aware of the last minutes before something changes. Cole Hartman, she said. Name that means nothing. Or the one I'm still defining, he said. Gray was quiet for a moment, and then she said, Vorkai ships transmit their position logs to the trade network. The logs are public record. I know. Any vessel in range can read them. I know that too. Junction 5 is inside the range of the Eastern Sector relay. He did not say anything. She did not say anything. They were both saying everything. Gray reached out with her uninjured arm and placed 2 fingers on the top of Cole's shoulder. Not a grab. Not a grip. The Vorkai gesture he had looked up the night before after she had used it once in conversation. It meant, I see this. I am marking it. 60 days is a long route, she said. The Barnett is overdue for an eastern run, Cole said. Trade contacts, resupply, the usual. That is a remarkable coincidence. It is, Cole agreed. The 1400 departure came, and Gray walked to the replacement freighter with the easy certainty of someone who knew where they were going. Cole stood at the docking window with Pete and Laura and Danny Ruiz, who had decided to wait for his next departure rather than leave early, and Carla, who said she was there for professional reasons and made no attempt to clarify what those were. The freighter undocked. It moved into the sector, growing smaller the way everything does with distance, not disappearing, just becoming the right size for where it was. Pete said, You filed the Eastern Run request already, didn't you? At 0700, Cole said. Pete nodded. Laura made a sound that was not a quiet celebration, but was adjacent to one. Carla told Danny she owed him something, and Danny said he preferred not to call it a bet, more of a mutual acknowledgement of the obvious. Cole watched the freighter until the sector took it. Then he turned and walked back toward the Barnett. The Eastern Sector was 60 days to the first waypoint. The Barnett was fast when she needed to be. faster than a loaded trade freighter, fast enough to reach a waypoint roughly simultaneously with a ship that had a 6-hour head start if you knew the efficient route. Cole knew every efficient route. He sat in the captain's chair and pulled up the navigation display. The familiar web of lines and points that was the sector translated into something a person could hold in their head. He traced the eastern run with 2 fingers. 60 days of open sector. A ship whose position logs were public record. A name that meant whatever he decided it meant. He set the course. Outside the viewport, the stars were where they always were. Waiting. Enormous. Made of the same material as everything else. They did not move from where you were standing. You had to be moving first. Cole Hartman set the Barnett moving. On the Vorakai freighter, 60 days from the first waypoint and further from everything familiar, Gray sat in the pilot's seat with the sector laid out ahead of her. Her arm ached with a deep, steady throb of something being forced to heal faster than it wanted to. She was used to that kind of pain. Most things worth doing came with it. She thought about a human man who had lifted a beam he had no business lifting. She thought about the word small, which in her language carried many meanings, and how she had been using the simplest one when the most complicated one was the one she meant. Her console pinged. A new position log on the relay network. A scout vessel Barnett class, registered Captain C. Hartman. Filed course, Eastern Sector, standard trade run, estimated first waypoint arrival day 58. Gray looked at this for a long moment. The sound she made was the one her translator usually rendered as a hum of consideration. But it was not that. It was the sound she made when something pleased her without entirely surprising her. The sound of a correct answer arriving on time. Something too large for any vessel available to hold it. She set the freighter to optimal speed. 58 days. She could work with 58 days.